Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the 2026 Fix with Rita.
Oh, you just threw me there. And Mel.
Well done.
Let's see if they can work it out.
Who's who?
Yeah,
or do we just sound the same? But I don't sound Australian like you. But yeah. Anyway, so 2026 Fix. What are we going to talk about, Rita?
Complacency.
Yeah.
Mel. So, what does complacency mean?
Right. So, this is just a co-pilot definition, and they've basically said it's an adjective showing smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. And the phrase that they've given is you can't afford to be complacent about security. So meaning you've achieved it and then you just chill. That's basically it. So
Easily
you think,
done.
I'm done now. Almost like, for those of you who watched WrestleMania, I've retained my championship. I'm just going to put my feet up for a while. That kind of thing. Yeah. And then you expect that it's a given that you're always going to get it. For example, Roman Reigns. Just joking. Okay. Anyway, on the side, because he got complacent when he didn't rock up to work a lot. Okay. And then where you've got someone like CM Punk, right, for night 2, who keeps coming in all the time because he knows he's got something to prove to retain it. Just saying.
Okay.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Spot on.
Okay.
So, is it a good thing?
Is it a good thing? I think, first of all, it's easy to become complacent, but no, it's not a good thing.
No, me neither.
And there's a few reasons behind that, because one of the things that you need to attach to complacency is this focus on growth. How are you going to grow if you stay complacent? There is no growth. You could be forced to grow, but then that means you're being forced to not be complacent.
And growth is one of the 6 human needs.
Yeah, you need that growth. So if you're looking at Maslow's, you need that build of self-esteem before you can get to self-actualization. But then once you've got to self-actualization, you can't just stay there, because eventually you're going to go down to the bottom again, where you then need to fulfill all of the other parts.
And I think, like what you're saying there in terms of
actualization.
Yeah, that's it. Is that when you realize what you can achieve, you would want to achieve more. Exactly. Because you've pushed past your limits.
Yeah.
And to me, that's motivating in itself to be like, okay, I've achieved this. You know, it's almost like if you think about if you've watched Maverick, Top Gun.
Don't think, just do.
Yeah, but where he was told the guideline is Mach 9.
Yeah, Mach 9, yeah.
And then he went and did Mach 10. And then he thought, let me just see if I can do 10.1, 10.2. And then sort of like, because you've reached that optimum.
So
and
why
if
not
you've
try?
Reached that
actualization. Actualization
needs to be a pronunciation.
Yeah, we need to do. Yeah,
but yeah, once you've reached that, you're like, actually, I can achieve more.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of an eye opener.
Yeah, I think one of the things is, like, the way I look at it is almost like swimming as well. So like I could stay, and when I do stay, I'll put my hands up and I'll say, I stay at the shallow end, right? Because I'm a little bit scared of going too deep. But there is this point where you're like, actually, I'm okay at this part. So let me just edge my foot in just a little bit further into the sea, because I know I've got used to this level of where my feet can firmly touch the sand if I put my legs down. And then therefore, let me just go an inch deeper into that sea to see if I can still carry on. And then there's this point where I'm like, okay, that's a little bit too deep, and then I come back in. So, but this is that point of complacency, because you get used to this point, and then you're like, actually, okay, I'm quite comfortable here. Now let me see if I can stretch that little bit more. And this is the part where if I stayed in the same level of the shallow, then I wouldn't know if I could swim that little inch deeper like in terms of that depth, just that bit more, and then still work my way back. So I have to keep edging, you know, bit by bit to kind of help my stamina and, you know, kind of get used to pushing my body a little extra. And obviously, you know, don't do it until you are a strong swimmer, but it is about kind of saying, right, it's the, you know,
it's overcoming that fear.
Yeah, overcoming fear, getting over that comfort zone, because we get complacent with the comfort zone. We're used to it.
Yeah. And another example is relationships.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get it stuck into a relationship, even if it's not working for both of you. And you can see that, you know, through either you're not talking as much, or when you do talk, it's arguing, or you're disagreeing, or you're just really winding each other up to the point where you're not happy, but you stay in it because you're
what you know.
scared to move and be on your own and take that break because you've got complacent in the routine of being together.
It's like those known knowns. And also what's something that comes to mind there is almost like when we talk about relationships, there's this point where it's like the be all and end all. You've got a partner, you've got a relationship, and therefore you've kind of like, you've made it. That's the kind of the sort of attitudes that we have in today's society. If you've got a relationship, you've made it, kind of thing. And this is also that part of being complacent. So if we go back to that meaning of being smug, or you're satisfied with your achievement, it's like, right, I've achieved the partner, and then therefore I'm going to stay in it, because then if I become single, it's going to look bad in front of society, family, friends, or whatever. I'm going to look like half the person. So therefore you just stay, because you've still got that status of being in a relationship. So this is that other part as well. So it's not only just the known knowns of saying, oh, it's what I'm used to, innit? And you just, you know, you continue to argue or not talk, or, you know, you continue to kind of stay in a level of toxicity. And then just because you want the status of being in a relationship. And a lot of people do that.
Yeah. So there's I can't speak today.
Why can't you speak? I think it's after night one, WrestleMania. You're a bit, you know, got a little bit later, you know, and stayed up for long hours.
Complacency is basically in every area of life. You can get complacent in your job, in, you know, in various areas. But what I'm going to ask Mel is, if you're complacent in the role, so let's give a job, I don't know, you work in a kitchen, and the only reason I say that is because we've been watching The Bear. Season 1 we just finished, which is, go and watch it, it's brilliant
if you haven't already done so.
I know,
we might be a bit late to the game,
a bit behind. But you know, where you know you're good at what you do, but you get so complacent in it, but that you also then start having imposter syndrome. Tell us more about that, because you then start questioning certain things that you're doing, and then taking, you know, like, for example, like you could, you know, you're good at your role, you do it, you're excellent, but then when someone asks you to go and share that in a different environment, you'd be like, oh, can I? Like, have you got too complacent in what you're doing that to share what you're good at can then lead to imposter syndrome? That's a difficult one.
I think that's kind of like your tacit and explicit knowledge that we spoke about a few episodes ago, because it's basically where you're so complacent in your tacit knowledge, i.e. your known knowns, the things that you do subconsciously, i.e. I can cook, and then therefore I'm just going to throw in my ingredients until someone says to me, oh, Mel, how many teaspoons is that? Or how many tablespoons? I don't actually measure in tablespoons or teaspoons. I just dash, and I know how much I need to put in based on how many people I'm going to make food for, or what I like to taste it as. So in that sense, if someone then asks me, I'm like, oh, okay, and then I have to question myself. And you're quite right, because then you will think, actually, do I know this?
Yeah.
And I do know it, because I dash in and I know what the ingredients do and what they produce. So taking it from that point of the chef or the cook situation, until they're asked, their tacit knowledge, they then have to translate that into explicit so that they can then instruct. And that's the bit, I think, where the wobble can come into it.
Because you've got so complacent doing that, in a way, you've been asked to step up, and it's like, oh, I don't know. So then that proves that complacency actually does work against you, because you've not pushed yourself to go beyond that, if that makes sense.
Or to at least write it down. I think there's a grey area with that. I think there's like, I think with complacency, it leads to imposter syndrome when you're being pushed out of your comfort zone. I don't think necessarily that it would be like imposter syndrome when you know it.
Because there are many sides to imposter syndrome, and then check out our episode to find out. Syndrome. But it can lead to that when you're pushed, and life will push you at odd times. It will, and it will require you to really step up and come out of that comfort zone, even though you're still sharing what you're good at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like, going back to the whole kind of chef example, is probably like the, going from, say, home cooked food, and then someone says, oh, do you know what? We want you to try out this recipe in a restaurant and lead a team. No way. Like, for me, I would be completely out of my comfort zone. I will have imposter syndrome, because I wouldn't be able to say, because you've got to, for me, it's about the hand that you have with the food, not necessarily saying, right, this is exactly the precision. I'm not a precision cooker, put my hands up to that. I'm more of the authentic, I know my hand, I know how much to put in. So I think in that's where that imposter syndrome kicks in. But this is why you need to, if you're looking to go into that direction, you do have to push yourself. You can't just say, I'm a good cook, and then that's it. You have to then say, right, let me push myself in different environments.
But then also you can get complacent in cooking the same thing over and over again. Yeah. Until you're like, this isn't like...
It doesn't have the wow factor anymore.
Let me try something new. Oh my gosh, I've got to try something new. Some people would be like, yeah, but I don't know, and even following a recipe could be quite new to some people. It's like, but I know that I can't keep cooking the same thing over and over again. My taste buds want something different.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between cooking for audiences than cooking for family and friends. You've got the opportunity to add more, whereas if they want it a certain way, you have to do it that same way. But that's just one example of that complacency. So you've got relationships, and say like something like career. When you're thinking about your job as well, like for me, teaching project management, for me it's the same qualification that I'm teaching, and I can get very complacent in it, and I could be very much instructional based, that by the time you get to, say, your fourth round, you could be quite monotone in how you do it. But because of different things that we learn, and the way you push yourself to learn new things, or different ways of different industries and how they do project management, for example, then this is where I then change some of my stories and I bring in a new example, because otherwise my delivery will be flat.
And
so it does create, it creates boredom. Complacency creates boredom.
And, an example is if you watch the same show over and over again, it eventually can become a background movie or, a program if you know it. There are only those that are very, like excellent, that you would be like, oh my gosh.
Still drawn into it. But I think also you could also start to use it from an educational perspective, depending on your interest. But again, if you're just someone who just watches it for pure entertainment, it will become background.
I think like a good example of that is if you watch, say, a football match.
Yeah.
And or any sports, and you've watched the match and you know the results and you know who's going to score, but then you watch it again and you're watching it again. It's like eventually it's like you need something new. Your mind will be great. And even just health-wise, your mind needs new stimulus on a regular basis. So no matter how much you love your job and love the routine that you have, you've got to change it from a health perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And also nothing stays the same. Another good example is going from paper to online. When I was kind of, again, way back in the day when I was working in a GP surgery, it was about paper patient files, physical files.
Having to file
then,
them. Oh,
no, it was so annoying. And then it was about transferring it to online and scanning all of that paper document. And then to the point of enabling GPs to be able to type in, and all of the patient files were always centralized in one place. Now that took a lot of, I would say, what's the word? It took a lot of influence and convincing for the ones that have been there for like tens of years. Yeah,
to adapt.
Yeah, because they were like, well, we've always done it this way. Why can't it stay the same? We know exactly where X person's files is, and we know exactly how to file it, and we know, I was about to say X files, and then we know exactly what order it goes in, and we can just put it there, and we know it's all there. Why do we now need to use the new system? And this is also not just being complacent, because it's always the way we've always done things, but it's also the resistance to change. That is the biggest drawback of that, of being complacent. You've reached it, you've got a good system, okay, great, you've got a new system.
Why rock the boat?
Yeah, but that's only going to work with maybe a couple of years at the most. Eventually you're going to have to evolve, because guess what, we're all digital. We're all
especially
online
with AI now.
Exactly. And so if you don't move with it, you are going to get left behind. And this is exactly that. AI, you're talking about, things that people are scared of AI. But actually, if you use it to your advantage, you can actually work with AI without AI replacing you.
Yeah.
Because you've understood.
So complacency is basically, you need to not be complacent.
You need to evolve.
Yeah, because it doesn't last for long.
Yeah.
You're always going to have to change, from someone who wants to become a parent and then gives birth. You can't be complacent just doing the do. You then become a parent, so you're then having to look after that child, raise that child, and then also when that child then grows up, it's like, okay, you're responsible for you. You're old enough. I'm letting go and taking,
pulling back the reins.
Pulling back. And now my focus is back to me again. So you can't get too complacent in the cycle of life. So
why do we
stay complacent in
every other area?
Yeah.
You have to keep moving. So with that complacency, if you find that you are being complacent, I think this is a time to kind of reflect on that. It's spring, it's time for reflection. Is that time to kind of bring in the new, as they say. And it's like, well, note down, what areas are you being complacent in? What are you I think with complacency is, what are you taking for granted as well? Because with that adjective of it being saying, like, you're smug, almost like this arrogance, it's almost like, what am I taking for granted that I should be complacency in having? It could be, thinking about family time, for example. It could be things around your own health. We get complacent with our health. I'm going to eat a whole load of junk, and it's all right, I've got a high metabolism and I can keep going. But actual fact, you're getting complacent. It's going to affect you in the long run. Going back to that age thing that we always seem to bring up a lot. Relationships. I've got a partner, I'm fine. Maybe you might need to do a bit of research.
Is it a happy relationship?
Is it, you don't need to overthink it. We're not saying to break up with your partners, by the way. But what we are saying is that if you feel there is something, a bit of a dip, or there's something that you do need to make a change on, or you need to evolve something, reflect on it. Take a note. What is it that you need to do? Where's the growth?
If you know where you're being complacent, you know where you could step up and move. And if it's fear that's holding you back, you know where it is. So look at that and see what small steps, break it down into small steps.
Yeah, small tasks.
And just do something different that helps you grow, helps you move, keeps you motivated, because
the more you learn, the more highlighted your life
and it makes life more fun to keep growing and not just keep things the same because it's easy.
Easy is not always good.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hardest things where the reward is.
And it might not even be hard. If you step up, it might actually be easier than what you've been living.
In actual fact, the hardest thing is staying the same, or staying, or not trying. Whereas when you try it, you might say, actually, oh, that wasn't that bad, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Might be able to do that again. And then you would then...
Going back to that self-actualization.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. Self-actualization.
I got there in you.
And then therefore, once you've reached that top, then you start again and then start kind of looking at more things to evolve in. It's just about making sure you just keep moving forward. Your breath doesn't stay the same. Your skin cells don't stay the same. Your inner cells don't stay the same. And then therefore, if our bodies aren't complacent, why should
nature doesn't stay the same. Seasons, they're always changing. Every season we have winter. Sometimes it snows, sometimes it doesn't.
There we go. We don't have the same cycle all the time. So therefore, we can't stay the same all the time. Keep moving forward.
Let us know your thoughts. Feel free to share with us. Comment.
Yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Spotify if you haven't already. If you're on Instagram, definitely follow us at LifestyleCombo. And if you happen to be looking for a vacation in October, feel free to join us on our retreat in Corfu, Greece. So I will put the details in the links in the details. That should probably makes more sense. And join us for 3 days in Greece in October.
Okay, so we'll end there. And Mel,
it's goodbye from me. And Rita,
it's goodbye from me.
Okay,
till next time, take care. Bye.
Bye.